So it's my pleasure to wish you all a very good evening and welcome you to this, the second in a series of 3 workshops. It's our second season of workshops that are being hosted collaboratively by URC Education and Learning team and the Children's and Youth Work team. I'm Sam Richards, I'm the head of Children's and Youth Work, and I'm supported this evening by the dream team of Lorraine Webb, and who's the Programme Officer for Children and Youth Work, and Heather Wilkinson, who's our administrator. Please make sure you help us by having your name on display. If you're not quite sure how to do that, I'm sure people have got the hang of all of this by now, but just message Lorraine, who's running the background, the tech stuff in the background, if you have any problems at any point this evening. And we are recording this workshop, but be reassured that none of your faces will show on the version that goes up on YouTube afterwards. It's just to capture the input from Dan, so that people who weren't able to make it tonight, or if you want to go back and watch it after the event, you're able to do that. We will be sending out a link next week after we've edited the video. So I hope that doesn't put you off having your cameras on, because it's so much nicer to see people's friendly faces. These are very practical workshops on hybrid church, and they've all been made possible by tapping into the Carmichael Montgomery Bursary Fund, which is also being used to fund small grants towards implementing the skills that you learn. So we'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end, and when we send out the email and link after the next week, we'll also send you a copy of the application form in case you would like to apply for some money towards something. So yes, it's being videoed. As we go along, please feel free to put all your questions into the chat. You may find that Dan answers them as he goes along. If he doesn't, there'll be time for question and answer at the end, and should there be any questions outstanding afterwards, we'll keep a record of them and we'll answer them in the email that comes out to everybody after the event. Our workshop leader this evening is Dan Morrell. So Dan combines being a part-time children's and youth outreach worker for URC Church in Sheffield and being a media for ministry consultant. I'm sure he'll be very happy to tell you more about that himself later. I've known Dan since I came into post, which was very nearly 4 years ago. At that point in time, he was the URC youth moderator. Among many other skills and talents, Dan is a qualified pilot. He's a member of the URC Communications Committee and the Assessment Board, and I've known him to be a consistently strong and passionate voice for young people's inclusion right across the United Reformed Church. So I'm delighted to hand over to Dan.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Sam. I actually knew Sam before she was in post because I actually interviewed her. So if any of you have any issues with Sam, then you don't just have me to blame, you have the rest of the panel to blame as well. But it's really good to be with you tonight, folks. And I'm going to apologise straight away for the kind of moving between screens, because I've got a camera up here, I've got Zoom down here, and all these kinds of things. So I've got lots going on tonight. But yes, thanks, Leo. So we've got I say it's a jam-packed night because there will be a lot of information, but folks, I don't want you to feel like this is the be all and end all, in that, you know, if you don't pick everything up today, then that's it. And I will say that some of the things I'm going to be talking about tonight in terms of the practicalities, the equipment you might need or want to do some live streaming with, not all of it is able to be set up by the average person. You know, one of my roles, or one of the things I do as part of my role as a media for ministry consultant, is to install these kinds of things in churches. So either as a kind of permanent fixture, you know, onto walls and into bits of you know, whatever, or indeed just to kind of set it up for churches, because there is some setting up that's needed, and it would be a waste of my time to be going through that tonight, because without the equipment in your hand, it can be quite difficult to conceptualize what I'm talking about. So I'm going to be talking you tonight, talking you through some of the equipment that you might want to look into getting. But as I say, it's not necessarily just going to be a case of, oh, buy it and it'll work. There is some equipment out there that does that, but I found it to be quite limiting. And actually, in terms of value for money, they basically charge you a fortune because it's a kind of all-in-one system. So the things I'm talking about tonight have been gathered together from experience, and from in my view, they combine the best of all worlds in that they're good value for money, which I appreciate can be tight at times. They're also simple to use, and that's one of the key things really. And thirdly, they're also usable at other times of the week. These sessions are titled Hybrid Church or Hybrid Worship, but ultimately, and I know it's cliche, but church is not just on a Sunday morning. So hopefully the equipment you might look into getting and the methods you might be learning will be applicable to other times of week. There's lots of churches I've worked with who are already using these sorts of bits of equipment at other times of the week, which is a really good use, not just in terms of getting your money's worth, but it's a hugely powerful tool to be able to use at other times of the week as well. So the first thing I want to kind of talk us through is actually why hybrid church, because I'm just going to put myself back in the corner. There we are. Why hybrid church? And I think I'm probably preaching to the converted a little bit here because you've all come to this hybrid church workshop, and so I'm kind of not really telling this to you to convince you, because you're probably fairly convinced by this point. But hopefully some of the things I'm just going to briefly talk through now will help you convince others, because that's usually the problem we're faced with in church, is convincing everybody else that your idea is a great idea, for example. So why are we doing hybrid? Well, the first thing is we in the past 18 months, we have discovered, and some of you might already be housebound, I do appreciate that. But for the rest of us, the past 18 months, or certainly a large chunk of it, has taught us, has shown us what it's like to be housebound. The reality is not great most of the time, of course, but there are lots of opportunities as well. But it's really shown us and opened our eyes as to what it's like to be housebound. Why hybrid? Well, it's global. We instantly have a much larger reach than just the reach into our local community. Digital gets us everywhere, and that is guaranteed. That's easy, so to speak. Easy in theory, anyway. And going hybrid and doing going online, even just on a Sunday morning, can be a really easy first step into digital, really. So I think it's really good. And in another way, it's a first step for people going to church as well, whether that be going to your church for the first time, they might have been to church elsewhere before, or it's a first step for them into church. And I will wholeheartedly say that going to church online or in a hybrid setting is you can get just as much from it. And for some, whether it be for social anxiety issues or other issues, perhaps disability as well, or instead, people might be too nervous or might not be able to make it to church at the beginning in person, and so to be able to join online in some way can be a really good first step into church for a multitude of reasons, really. I've explained just a couple there. And just before I go into that one, the other point as well is that it can be a really good way of being involved in church without the baggage of going to church. For example, getting dragged in onto the tea and coffee rota, or being asked who your mother-in-law's sister's cousin is, because so and so might know them, and all those things that often we take for granted and we take as normal, but for some people can be really overwhelming. So we do have to kind of recognize that, and so hybrid can be a really good way of approaching that. For some people, it's their church. Some people I know have engaged wholly online with a particular congregation. It could be a congregation in their vicinity, in their country, or just anywhere in the world. and they could consider that their church, and an engagement in a hybrid way can really, make that real, make that come to life. So it's not unreasonable for somebody to engage with your church just wholly online. That's okay. And ultimately, folks, the end goal doesn't have to be the person coming to church in person, because our end goal is to tell people about Jesus Christ. And if we're doing that in a hybrid way, so be it. So it's really not the be all and end all if they don't ever come in person. Similar with loads of other stuff we do, say during the week, when we run a messy church on a Saturday, when we do all these kinds of things during the week, we're not aiming to say, oh well, we'll take them into messy church, they'll enjoy messy church, and then we can get them in on a Sunday morning. Haha. That shouldn't be the end goal, because things like messy church, I mean, it's got the word church in it, so that should be quite obvious. But messy church is church. It's not Sunday morning is church and all the other things kind of feed into it. That's absolutely shouldn't be the end goal. So, and ultimately, well, it shows we're adapting and thriving to, within these difficult times, that as a church, we've recognized a need that people want to engage online, and that we're changing and we're adapting to be able to help people do that. And so it's really, something a minister over with us in Leeds said on our pre-synod meeting on Thursday, was that the last 18 months has shown us that we actually can change. We always talk about churches being resistant to change and all those kinds of things, but the past 18 months has shown us that we can change, and we have 47 people here tonight. Those are 47 people, perhaps even 47 churches who have probably already changed in the past 18 months, but are looking to change even more. And I think that's a real positive we can take from the past 18 months. So let's have a look at some equipment. And there are so many different avenues, as I said, that you can explore with this. And I'm going to suggest to you a couple. One of which is, there's a couple of cruder ways, really. And then there's kind of a bit more of a complex setup. Because I want to offer you those as some options, but they're not the only options. But these, as I said earlier, are the options that I found to be cost effective, usually simple to use, and are just generally and adaptable as well for not just kind of using on a Sunday morning. And I'd really like, and again, to kind of drill home that last point, I really want to remind us that it shouldn't just be for a Sunday morning. I'm just going to pop myself into the other corner. So you can see that we're doing some tips as well. So I won't just be telling you about the equipment that you might want to look into getting, but also, let's say you've got the equipment, you might literally already have it, or you go away from today, get yourself some equipment or whatever, and then you want to know how to use it effectively. And so we're going to look a little bit into that as well. So the first thing I'd like to encourage you to do is just to make a start. Because there is, of course, no better place to begin than at the start. And I'm sure many of you will have already made a start, which could be why you're here tonight. And so that's a really positive thing. And, I applaud you for that. Sorry, there we are. So, do not be harsh on yourselves if you don't feel it's gone quite well, or whatever. Lots of makeshift solutions in the past 18 months. I completely see that, and I have been on the sending end of that as well. I've been creating some makeshift solutions as well. So don't be hard on yourselves if you don't feel it's going too well at the moment. And if you haven't made a start, just make a start. It can't go wrong, he says. And then also think about what the equipment you're going to buy, what you're going to do, the way you're going to use it. Think about whether that's sustainable, folks, because I go to a lot of churches with sound systems and less so live streaming systems, because obviously they're quite new. But I go to a lot of churches with lovely, beautiful new sound systems, and nobody knows how to use it. because say someone was with the church who knew a lot about sound systems, suggested they get this, that, and the other, and then they left for whatever reason, and now the church is completely scuppered. So, and in a similar vein, you know, there's so many things like that. And of course, we have people volunteer their time out of the goodness of their hearts, which we absolutely appreciate and adore. And unfortunately, it's only something that they know how it works. So then when they leave or whatever happens, you know, we're not able to use it. So think about what the whether the equipment you're going to buy, is it sustainable? Can other people be trained to use it? And again, it doesn't have to be training that you do, folks. Don't feel like you're on your own in buying the equipment, installing it, and then training people on it. You know, that there are people out there, and yes, I am included in that. So it's a bit of shameless self-promotion. There are people out there who can do that for you. So don't worry. And start small. So, you know, keep it simple to begin with. If that's all you ever get to, then great, that's absolutely fine as well. And that's it for that bit. And before I go on to equipment, there's a bit in this PowerPoint that I haven't mentioned, and that's Wi-Fi. And I don't want to touch on it too much because every church's situation is different. But Wi-Fi, yeah, I mean, it's of course key. Without Wi-Fi or some sort of internet connection, you won't be able to live stream. So before you buy any live streaming equipment or any kind of equipment of this nature, get Wi-Fi if you haven't got it, or get a decent Wi-Fi connection. And again, if you don't have Wi-Fi, as in through a telephone line traditionally, into your church, or you've got it that goes into the vestry, and then there's 16 stone walls between the vestry and where you're going to be live streaming from, get that sorted too, because you don't want to buy all this equipment and then realize you basically can't use it because you can't live stream. Another caveat to that is that you can record services using this equipment. So you're not totally scuppered. And if you're never ever going to get a good Wi-Fi connection, then that might be your only option, which is fine. So that's okay. You can use this, as I say, this equipment for live streaming, for recording even. So don't worry if that is a prohibitive factor. But get your Wi-Fi sorted. And when I say sorted, what do I mean by that? You know, we often talk about you know, good or bad Wi-Fi. We can put some numbers to it. So Wi-Fi, and when you're at home, every broadband provider will quote you a Wi-Fi, what they call the download speed. So that's the information you receive from the internet. So when you're watching Netflix, when you're browsing Facebook, that uses download, because you're downloading, you're getting information from the internet. So most broadband providers will quote you a download speed as this is your internet speed. And you can, different Wi-Fi providers will say, oh, this is fast. Others will say, this is fast. In terms of live streaming, you don't always need to worry too much about download speed, especially if you're using something like YouTube that's only going one way, really. But in terms of a figure, in terms of a number, you're going to want to be looking at least 30 megabytes per second, folks. That might mean nothing to you, but that's what you're looking for. So if you need to speak to a broadband provider, that's the kind of number you'd be looking for. But that's a real bare minimum. You want to be aiming for 50 or 60 plus. Nowadays, fiber broadband takes you well over 100. So, you know, that could be a possibility, but 30-ish is your bare minimum. And that's bearing in mind, you're actually getting 30 to where you're sat doing your live streaming, not where it is in the vestry, which is, you know, 300 yards away from the church. So, you know, so yes, on upload speeds, had I got to quoting a figure for that?
Yes, but do say it again, because I think it was a
Yeah, so the figure would be somewhere above 5 megabytes per second. That's your real bare minimum for that. But again, with every speed, the more the merrier. You'd be lucky, you'd want to be getting at least 10 if possible, ideally 20, but you can get away with as low as 5. But yeah, do make sure you hassle your broadband providers for those speeds, because as I say, they don't always give those as standard. And do also look at when they quote the speeds for, because they will often quote them for, it will be this speed at 3 a.m. on Tuesday morning, which is no use to you when it's on, obviously 10:45 on a Sunday or whatever. That's not to say they'll be able to give you a speed for 10:45 on a Sunday morning, but when you're comparing broadband providers, perhaps, and I don't want to sound too much like Martin Lewis, but do just check what speeds they're quoting and for when that might be, or whether it's an average or whatever. As we mentioned, as somebody mentioned, 4G routers, mobile hotspots, they're all possible. And if you might get a good enough connection from those, of course, it does rely on having good mobile signal and good 4G. But you might that might be, of course, your only option. So that's, of course, absolutely fine in that circumstance. Yes, absolutely, Louise. As I say, yeah, more than 5 is better. Yeah, as I say, more the merrier. Anyway, as I said, I did only want to kind of brush past Wi-Fi, because it's not something that I can kind of help you address straight away, or anyone can help you address straight away. If the Wi-Fi you've got is not good enough, get in touch with your broadband provider, see if they can offer you a higher speed. If not, speak to another one, or then you might want to look at exploring different options. So let's have a look at some equipment. And actually, I say that, but the first kind of thing I'm going to talk us through is not really using much additional equipment from that which you should already have, or certainly you will all have here, because you've all dialed in on a laptop, on an iPad or a phone or whatever. So you've all got one of the pieces of equipment. And so it's basically just a user Zoom call. And so obviously we've talked, the last 18 months, everyone's been talking about Zoom services and all those kinds of things. And we can use a Zoom call either just to Zoom our service, set up a laptop and away you go. Or you've got a few different options, because you could log in with multiple laptops and multiple phones onto the same Zoom call. And then you've basically got yourself then multiple camera angles. A key thing to make sure is that only one of those is connected to the audio. You don't want sound coming out of all of them. You also don't want sound going into the Zoom call from all of them either. So do just be aware of that. But then you can also, you can live stream directly from Zoom as well. So there's a live streaming function that you can set up in your Zoom settings. And again, a shameless plug, which I'll send the link to Sam afterwards. I've got a video that kind of takes you through going through all the Zoom settings. And one of those settings is the live streaming stuff. So you can have a look at that. So that's a way you can Zoom, so you can have your personal, maybe slightly more personal interaction with folks, but you can also live stream it to YouTube or Facebook, which will help increase your reach, by many factors. So this is, by far the easiest. It's crude, it's simple, and it's something we're already familiar with, because we're all familiar now with using Zoom. So as I say, only one connected to the audio, and we can use the spotlight function, which has already been used a little bit tonight, to spotlight between me from after Sam, and then you can use that basically to be able to switch between your different cameras. And then if you want your PowerPoint, you know, the hymn words and all those kinds of things that you put on your PowerPoint on your screen, then you can just share your screen. Internet I've already mentioned to an extent, but it will use more internet than, say, if you just had one laptop connected, folks. So again, when we're talking about those broadband speeds and all those kinds of questions, do be aware of that. And of course, the other thing about internet as well is who else is using it? Because if you've got a church of, I don't know, 100 people, wouldn't that be nice? And they're all connected to the Wi-Fi, then you know that's going to have an impact on your Wi-Fi speed. So you might want to look at getting a separate one just for your live stream, if that's possible. And the sound that comes from our laptops, it's perfect for what we're doing now. You know, me speaking into the laptop and me hearing out of the laptop, those kinds of things. So it's not suited for a church, an entire church. So the audio might not be perfect. But again, we're talking about a very simple way of doing things here.
Back.
Apologies again, folks. It's not my internet. I really do not know what's going on here. My laptop is having an absolute hissy fit.
So Dan, there was just a question about the difference between live streaming and live streaming Zoom and just zooming, because zooming is live, if you see what I mean. So if you just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, so I have that's probably something I should have clarified at the start, is that I'm using the words interchangeably. So I'm using live streaming to talk about everything. So that's zooming, going on, you know, just using Zoom or YouTube or Facebook. The equipment I'm going to be talking through tonight, when I eventually get there, I do apologize, folks, can be used for all of those things. And with Zoom, we can live stream directly from Zoom onto YouTube as well. So we can kind of kill two birds with one stone there. So hopefully that kind of helps clarify that.
Yeah, so YouTube and Facebook are for broadcasting, so the people can see but can't
That's right.
be part of it. Whereas if you're within the Zoom call, you're part of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's benefits with both. Of course, Zoom, you get that more personal interaction, and there is a potential for you know, a two-way communication. However, you do also have the additional workload of managing a Zoom meeting. So ensuring people are muted and admitting people in from the waiting room, all those kinds of things. They're all, you know, they all take time. They all take a person to do it. And so when we're thinking about things that are, you know, we're limited people, limited resources, then, you know, if you are in that situation, then you might want to look at YouTubing or Facebook instead, because that's just one way. So you don't have to manage anybody else. So as I say, you can just use this Zoom call. You don't have to let anyone else into the Zoom call. You can just, you can quite literally just have those different laptops, those different phones in the Zoom call, and then live stream that onto YouTube or Facebook. So it can be a really good way of going about things. As I say, it can consume, well, it will consume more internet. So if you're on a limited resource of internet, then do bear that in mind. But then of course, if you're sending stuff onto Zoom, then you've got that added interaction as well in terms of polls, breakout rooms, whatever you might want to look into doing. As I say, sound is an issue if you're just using sound that's coming out of a laptop or going into a laptop, I should say, or a phone or whatever. And that says cumbersome. So yes, it is it's a clunky way of going about things. I won't beat around the bush, folks. But it's a way of going about things, and that's, I would say that's kind of the key thing, because it's, we're looking at things that are either tech simple, or things that are not too complex. This is a bit more complex in that you've kind of got all those setting up bits to do, but in principle it's quite simple, because it's just logging different phones or laptops or whatever onto a Zoom call, which we've done with our own laptop. So in principle it can be quite simple, but it's cumbersome in the sense that you've got these laptops all turned around facing different places and whatever. So do bear that in mind. So we've talked about that kind of rudimentary way of live streaming. Let's have a bit of a better look into what equipment we might want to get hold of. So buy a camera. That could be one of your first steps, folks. Buy a camera, or probably a better option would be to buy a camcorder, because they're much more suited towards this kind of stuff, and they usually have a better zoom as well. So you can sit your camcorder at the back and zoom all the way into the person at the front. And then you connect that camera to a computer, a PC, a laptop, a Mac, whatever it might be. But how do you connect it? Well, actually, I should have had one to hand, and it's just over here. You connect your, and I'll just make myself larger. There we are, so you can all see. We need to get ourselves what is called a capture card. A HDMI capture card, some call it a USB capture card, but that is basically what it does, folks. I'm just going to say it as it is, but it takes a HDMI. Well, that's going to be quite blurry, but anyway, you get the picture. So it takes HDMI, which is a video link. So you might have them in your TV, and you'll have them coming out your laptop, etc. And it converts it into USB. And what that does essentially, folks, is it fools our computer into thinking that our lovely camcorder is a USB webcam. Some of you may have webcams anyway. You'll have them maybe attached to your computer or whatever. Some of you might have them built in. But it basically fools our computer into thinking that our lovely camcorder is a webcam. So then you can use that webcam to go into Zoom, or to go onto YouTube or Facebook or whatever. And then you need what is called a USB audio interface. Again, don't worry too much about whether you understand what that means or not. Just write it down, because basically what that does, folks, is this is addressing our sound quality issue that I was talking about. So what we can do with a USB audio interface is we can take a separate feed from our sound desk, so the feed that's not going to our speakers, and we take that out of our sound desk and we plug it into this interface. And interface is basically a computing word for bit in between, basically. Anyone who does computing or anything, I do apologize. That was a shocking explanation, but that's pretty much what it is. And that also converts then our sound into USB. So what we've essentially got now is we've got our sound coming in via USB, we've got our video coming in via USB, and so then we've got our sound and our video sorted. So then we can go onto Zoom, we can go onto YouTube or whatever. You're probably thinking about cost at this point, I'm sure. You can get camcorders as cheap as £50, but you know, we've got to balance quality and things as well. And the other thing you need to think about is whether, or you need to definitely confirm, not just think about, is whether your camera has what is called clean HDMI. And again, if you just don't really worry too much about what that means. You just need to know that it's got it, and there will usually be some indication. I can supply a link in the chat if I just give myself a few seconds of talking very slowly, then I'll be able to find the link, which has a non-exhaustive list of cameras that have what is called clean HDMI. As I say, non-exhaustive, but there are plenty on there. And some of them range from actual cameras, what we call SLRs or DSLRs, and some are camcorders, some are really, really top of the range. So don't think you need to get something that level. But Panasonic I would say, the best manufacturer of them at the moment. Unfortunately, there was a warehouse fire, and you honestly couldn't make this up. There was a warehouse fire at Panasonic back in about May, and it wiped out lots and lots of camcorders and presumably cameras as well. And so the stock levels are really, really bad at the moment. And it's also had a knock-on effect on the other manufacturers as well, because people have gone to other manufacturers. But you'd be looking at, so Panasonic have one called a V380. They have the HX1. And I won't list them all, folks, because it's just going to mean nothing to you. So I'll send some links and stuff through afterwards. And essentially, as I say, they give clean HDMI. And what that means is, when I'm sure you've all taken a photo on a digital camera, and you stood there with the camera, and on the little screen on your camera, it's got the battery life in the top right hand corner, the zoom level, and all those kinds of bits and bobs on the screen. Clean HDMI means it takes that screen but strips away all of the text. That's what it means. So this camera here, this is a decent, it's called a mirrorless camera. And as you can see, it's really good quality. And I can zoom in, maybe a little bit too much. And so you can see, and this is actually going through another piece of equipment that I'm going to point you out to shortly. And this is giving me clean HDMI, because on the back of the screen, I've still got the battery life and all those kinds of things, which I hope isn't getting too low, but it might be by this point. But it strips it all away and sends it onto the screen. So that's what we want, basically. So generally, the cheaper cameras you get, the less likely they are to have clean HDMI. So yeah, do look out. And as I say, I'll send some links through, but stock levels are not great at the moment. I'll have to admit that. But you get your camera, you get your camcorder, you get a HDMI cable. Sometimes it'll be a micro or a mini HDMI. That's camera to camera, it depends. So I can't just advise on which one you need. But yeah, it's going into one of these. I didn't mention the cost in the end after all that rabbiting. The cost of a decent camcorder, you'd probably be looking at about £400 to £500. Cost of one of these, you can get them off Amazon for £5–10. So that's all good. A USB audio interface as well, that you're probably looking £30, £30 to £60. Companies like Behringer make them. There's also a company called Scarlett as well. Focusrite, who make a Scarlett audio interface. Again, I will make sure there's links being distributed for those things. As I say, I don't want to get tied up too much in the specific models, but that's essentially what you need. so then we're sending that into Zoom or to YouTube or whatever. So happy days. And again, you can plug in multiple cameras into your computer if you've got a good computer. Unfortunately, it does kind of require a good computer. So do just be aware of that. But it is possible to plug in multiple cameras into your computer. So you can have that option. And what you can do on Zoom is you can change the camera on Zoom. So I don't know if you've seen this, but next to your stop video button, there is a little arrow pointing upwards, and if you click on that, you can see that you can change the camera. Some of you might not obviously have another option to change to, but that is what you can do. Excuse me, I'm full of a cold at the moment. So that, folks, is our simple setup. And some of you may be thinking, oh my gosh, Dan, that is absolutely not simple. Well, sorry, but also, as I said at the very beginning, this is not necessarily something anyone would expect you to set up on your own. So don't worry about that. Some great comments in the chat there. Thank you. Old iPhones do indeed work as cameras, and any Android phones as well. So you can get another adapter. For those of you who have a newish Android phone, you can which uses what we call USB-C, which is that kind of
here we go. I think we've been here before, haven't we? Hopefully Dan will be back with us again shortly. Thank you so much, everybody, for bearing with. It's always the session on technical stuff that has the technical problems, isn't it? It's usually me that's dropping out of these meetings.
Has anybody come across a really good microphone that'll pick up both speech and music in church from reasonable distances?
That is a very good question.
Sorry, what do you mean by reasonable distances? Like, well, for a whole...
Well, supposing you're running a service and you may need to move from one side of the church to the other, and you want to set something up which will collect the music and what's said reasonably well, which will basically go down a Zoom call.
Yeah, you've got a couple of choices. Close miking is generally the best option. So, and if you just want something simple, Rode, an Australian company, make a really good, relatively cheap wireless set, which a lot of people use for like making videos and stuff, and they charge them up over USB, and you can clip them onto people and pass that around. So that's a good option. If you want something from a distance, you'd need what's called a shotgun microphone, and then connect it with an audio interface. But say if you're if you can mic people up with either standing in front of a mic or with a wireless mic, you'll generally get much cleaner results. What's interesting is that your ears do a lot of filtering of audio out. So if you're in a room and somebody's speaking at the front, you actually naturally filter out a lot of the background ambient noise from people, rustling or coughing or whatever, which when you listen to it on a microphone that's just in a room, you just hear so much more of that background noise because you don't have that spatial information that you would get in the room where your brain can filter that out. So that's where close miking somebody will get a much cleaner result than just pointing a mic at somebody at a distance.
Okay, just one other question. I'm finding difficulty when I plug my USB mic in. You go down and you go to settings. There's a little V on the side of my my audio thing, and it gives me a bewildering set of options as to what I can click into. And it seems to make a big difference to what people hear at the other end. Any comment on that?
When you say the V, do you mean within Zoom?
With Zoom, the little symbol at the bottom,
arrow.
there's a little inverted V. Click on, and it gives you an option as to what.
Okay, so similar to what Dan was saying about the cameras, where next to the video there's the same arrow, and you can choose between multiple cameras. You'd have the same thing with your audio interfaces. So you'd see often if it was a laptop, you'd have a built-in microphone, or then if you've plugged in a USB microphone, it would come up. It would usually mention that it's USB in the microphone.
That is entirely correct.
Dan, good to have you back with us. We'll
Hello.
back to you.
Sorry, Dan, we were just treading water a bit in the meantime, having a couple of topics about microphone selection.
Can you hear me at the moment?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I was going to say
Dan, we can hear you, but your picture is frozen. Just you asked us to warn you.
You're frozen for me.
Not frozen here, no.
Oh, is that so? You can hear me, you can see me, okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes.
Beg your pardon.
Right.
Beg your pardon.
For some reason, Zoom is still not playing too much ball with me. I can't really click on anything, but we'll make do. My granddad was a URC minister, but the wisest thing he ever had to say to me was, "Do as I say, not as I do." Indeed, the entire mantra for tonight is pay attention to everything I've been saying, but get a better laptop than what I've got. I've had issues for a while on Zoom. Anyway, so I did sort of notice when about I froze, so hopefully I'll be able to pick up straight away. So we've been talking about and we mentioned things like lighting and stuff as well, and helpfully thanks to those who've kind of chipped in about the things on changing our sound sources and changing our video sources. All of those things are possible and quite simple to do. So we've talked about our kind of simple setups really. But let's have a little bit of a deeper think, because there are a few things missing really from the setups that I've gone through so far. One of them is more camera angles. So we just talked there about really, although the option is there, a one camera setup really. And I've put attention spans in brackets, folks, because the average human being's attention span when someone's talking about something in person, I'll start with online actually, because when we're looking at something online, when you're watching something on TV, it won't take you long to notice, or you do have to be kind of actively paying attention. You'll notice how many times the camera angle changes on when you're watching TV. On action films and stuff, it happens even more often. We're talking every couple of seconds, folks, if that sometimes. And I'm not saying that our Sunday services need to be blockbuster videos, but not even videos, whatever the new stuff is. I just thought blockbuster video, they don't need to be kind of massive productions, but the reason the camera angle changes so often is because the human brain, the way the human brain is wired, is it can't pay attention to the same camera angle, the same focus, the same point of view for more than a kind of a few seconds, really, maybe up to about 10 seconds. Obviously, it varies person to person, but it doesn't really matter how interesting your sermon is or whatever you're doing. That is just the reality. Even things like the Queen's speech nowadays is not just 10 minutes of looking at the Queen. It cuts to loads of different pictures and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly, Sarah. TikTok is the prime example of that. And yes, the generation is now evolving whereby there probably are those attention spans are going down and down, but I'm not talking necessarily always about attention spans of, my child has a small attention span. We're thinking of the kind of subconscious attention span. It's arguably our attention span is probably less than the average length of sermon as well in person. So that might be something to think about as well, but I won't address that anymore. So we're kind of missing more camera angles. And as soon as you have more than one camera angle, you've got loads, because you can not only change between the two, but whilst you're on one camera, you can move the other camera, and then you've got a new camera angle. So that's something new for people to look at. So as soon as you kind of change the camera angle, that buys your audience, so to speak, buys their attention for another 10 seconds or whatever. So every time you change the camera angle, it really helps to reset the clock, and then you've bought their attention for another 10 seconds. And we've talked about the Zoom setup. That's not, as I said, it's not entirely simple to do. It's simple in principle, but it's not always simple to do. And generally, folks, you know, we want some good quality if we can. We want a good quality camera, we want good quality audio, because let's face it, every time we've done a live stream in the past 18 months, as soon as the sound goes or whatever, then, you know, you will hear about it, I'm sure. So, you know, for as much as we don't want to just be appeasing the complainers, you know, it is important that our video and our audio is good. And yeah, my computer's not powerful enough. Quite literally, mine is not powerful enough. But you may be struggling with the size of computer, and I don't mean physical size, but the internal size of your computer. That can be an inhibiting factor. So your computer may not be able to hack a camera coming in via the HDMI capture card, and also the audio coming in via the audio interface. And that's just the reality, unfortunately. So you may never be able to get a better computer than that, or you may be stuck with the computer you've got. Whatever the problem might be, there is a way, and I'm about to go through that way, of not needing a powerful computer to do all of this stuff necessarily. Obviously, if you've got one, great, and try and get one if you don't. But this is a way you can get away with not having as powerful a computer as you would for plugging it all into your computer. And it's with one of these. And it's actually literally one of these, because this is what I'm using at the moment. Which you might be thinking, oh, well, it's not worked very well tonight, has it? But actually, the box is working perfectly fine. It's just my computer that is not. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a bit of kind of inception thing, because I'm going to pick up my camera and move it onto the box, because this is what it looks like. It looks very pretty. It's got loads of lovely lights, and it's all color coded and things like that. It looks very nice, particularly in the dark. But this is what is called an A10 Mini Pro. You can see the name there. And it's designed by a company called Blackmagic, which genuinely has been a stumbling block for some churches. They don't like the name of the company. Well, you know, I've got nothing to say to that, but so it's called the Blackmagic A10 Mini. This one is called an A10 Mini Pro, and I would recommend getting the Pro if you can. If you're going to spend this much money anyway, you might as well get the Pro. There is just an A10 Mini, but I would recommend getting the A10 Mini Pro. You're going to ask why, of course, and I'm about to tell you why, of course. So, and you see what happened there. I started to press a button and it disappeared. So we've got an option. That's one of the things we can do. But what the A10 Mini Pro has is it's got 1, 2, and then there's a third and a fourth there, HDMI inputs. So I've got one coming in, which is from this camera. And then I've got another one, which is coming from my laptop, my other laptop, the one that seems to actually be working perfectly well. So, and then, but the idea would be, or what this would be my suggested setup, is that you get 3 cameras and use the 4th for your laptop. Obviously, it doesn't matter which number or whatever. And that doesn't have to be 3 very good cameras. It doesn't have to be 3 £400 cameras. I would suggest, the setup I would suggest is get 1 decent camera. So yeah, spend £400 or £500 on 1 camera. And then get yourself something like, and again, you're not by no means restricted to this, but get yourself something like a GoPro. You can get them again cheap off eBay for £200, between £100 and £200. And you can get them then either they're refurbished or secondhand or whatever. But that gives you a nice wide shot. That's what a GoPro can give you. So you'd stick that maybe at the back of church, and then you can get a wide shot of your church. And again, I did pick up some of the comments in the chat about people on camera and stuff. Of course, you do need people's permission. And yeah, if you're in any doubt, folks, please get in touch with your synod safeguarding officers, because they are the people who are in the know. So yeah, if there's any doubt, get in touch with them. But yeah, you can stick it at the back still, get a good wide shot of most of the church. You would have 1 main camera, like a decent one, like the one I'm holding. And that will do your zooming, your moving about, all those kinds of things. And then your third one, your third camera, it could just be someone's phone that they've brought along on the day for use in the live stream. Hopefully they're not going to use it during the worship service. It depends on who's preaching, I'm sure. But that's an option you've got. And then, as I say, the 4th one will be a laptop. So that's got your PowerPoint in and things like that. The A10 Mini Pro has so many features that I could not possibly describe them all today. One of the features is that it comes into Zoom as well. So I can use it as a webcam on Zoom, as I am using now. So I can switch between my cameras. I can do what's called a picture-in-picture, which is what you've been seeing for most of tonight, where you can see my picture within another picture. You can move that about the screen as well. That's making my eyes go funny. It's probably going to make your eyes go funny too. So there's loads of different options. And it's also got, and I spotted someone who put this in the chat, but as I said, I can't even click on the chat at the moment. But that means that it's got a built-in encoder, which again, don't worry about what that means, but it basically means you can live stream directly from this box onto YouTube. And that's not going into a computer at all. It does the hard work for you. So as I was saying earlier about my computer's not powerful enough, that can help address that issue because it will do the live stream for you. You connect it up to the internet, of course, you need internet to live stream, but that's what you can do. As I say, there are loads of other things you can do with it. You can record directly to a hard drive. So if you want to do any recording, you can do that. You can have fancy transitions. All of this is a little bit cheesy for me, but those options are there. That's right, Louise and Michael. Yeah, you can connect it up to a phone. So you can live stream from a mobile hotspot if you don't have Wi-Fi. So I've talked a lot there about video, and at the moment the sound that you're hearing, my voice, is coming through this camera. It's not great, probably. I don't think it's great, but it'll do. But the other perk of it is it's also got 2 sound inputs as well. They're called, we would usually term it as like a headphone jack. Technical speak, it's 3.5 millimeter jack. So a standard headphone jack to you and I. So you can take, thank you, Sandy. So you can take sound from your sound desk again, in the same way that we were talking about earlier, and send it straight into the A10 Mini Pro as well. So you've got your sound, decent sound, and you've got your video as well, and you can switch between them all. Obviously, I've only got one camera set up today and one laptop, but you can see that there's so much chopping and changing you can do.
Dan,
again,
I'm just going to ask how much more. I'm aware that obviously we've lost time with you dropping out. How much more material you've got to share, and whether people are happy to stay on a little bit longer, or
there is very I've talked about all of that. I was going to talk about the cost, and then just a couple of top tips after that.
Brilliant, that's great.
So yeah, pretty much at the end. So cost of one of those on its own, about £400 to £500. The price of them is varying a lot at the moment, just because of market demand and things. But that's your rough estimate. And well, yeah, I've put at the bottom there, get in touch. I'm not the only person who can help you with this, folks. Others can. And indeed, if you all contacted me, then I wouldn't be able to help you all anyway. So, there are, and you can, as I said, you can buy this equipment yourself. Again, a bit of shameless self-promotion. I do have a package where I will basically box up for you all of the stuff you need to live stream. So a camcorder, a GoPro, a way of connecting a phone up, and all the cables you need, and an A10 Mini Pro. I'll box it all up and ship it to you. That's if you can set it up, and it'll come with instructions. There are swings and roundabouts there, I guess. The other good thing about the A10, and I saw someone I'm just seeing small flashes of the chat, that you can use this all week. You can use it for all different types of things as well. So on to finally just a few top tips and this applies to everything really, to all of the live streaming. So how can we help our engagement? Well, on Zoom, we've already talked about this, using things like polls, using a whiteboard, and you could even have a physical whiteboard. If you're doing hybrid, just set up a whiteboard in church, job done. For some reason, we only in the past 18 months, we've thought using a whiteboard is a great idea. So, but it was before then as well. And indeed, taking verbal contributions, that is one advantage of doing stuff on Zoom, is you can have people contribute to whatever you're doing, to your worship, to your meeting, to your event. And indeed, the verbal contributions in a much more significant way, such as doing a reading, doing a prayer in worship, and I saw someone mention that earlier as well. And a couple of top tips for YouTube as well. YouTube does have a live chat, so there is a way of interacting in some way with people on YouTube. So when you read out a live chat, everyone loves a shout out. Like a radio channels, radio shows spend half of their time, giving shout outs to people, because people love it. Everyone loves hearing their name. One of the schools I go into at the moment, they say, "Oh, you're Dan, I saw you on TV." I wish I was on TV, but I was on their TV in school, because I'd done an assembly, I'd recorded it, and they showed it on their TV. Everyone loves a shout out, so do read out the live chat and say hello to the person who's tuning in from any town. Also, look at the camera. Again, do as I say, not as I do, because I've not entirely done it all night, but I've tried where I can. If you look at the camera, you're of course directly addressing them. So do make sure you're able to do that, even if it is just a hello to those joining us at home or wherever they might be. Those are small things, but really important. And just think about your wording as well. So think about try and avoid words like virtual. So virtual services. It's not virtual, it's real. So do try and avoid those kinds of terminology. And yeah, in the same vein, physical as well, virtual, physical. I try to use online, offline. or of course hybrid to blend the two. So, you know, do just think about the words you use, and they're often words that we've etched into our everyday language or everyday in church language, perhaps. But we might have to start etching them out. So, you know, do be careful and do just think about the language you're using. And use interaction tools. If you've been in some of the workshops or whatever things I've done in the past, I've used something called Mentimeter, which is a really powerful interaction tool. Not going to touch on it in any detail tonight. Yeah, Ruth, another one online and on site. That's another helpful one, which helps to kind of more accurately describe really what we're doing here. Yeah, so have a look at Mentimeter. It's really cool. Basically, I'm not going to dwell on it tonight, but just have a look. You'll have loads of fun. So that's all I've got in terms of content. The other place as well as Mentimeter actually is Kahoot, Kahoot, and it's like a quizzing kind of app, and that's a way you can help build that interaction between what's going on in church and what's going on online. So it really helps to blend the two together, and is an excuse for people to get their phones out in the service, which people always feel it's a bit naughty, isn't it? Let's get our phones out in church. So, you know, another good way of interaction. Folks, I know that was a real whistle-stop tour and made even more whistle-stop by my awful laptop. But I hope that, and I know it's all been kind of input from me, but I hope that has given you a if not brief, overview of some, and not all again, but some of the options that you've got. And indeed, the options that I feel after the kind of 18 months of research of doing this, and obviously using the equipment as well, of what options you've got, and the ones that I feel the simplest, the best value for money, and hopefully the most sustainable ones as well. But as I say, don't feel like you have to do it all on your own. These things are used, but also installed by professionals. I wouldn't really call myself a professional, but I get paid, so I guess I am. But you know, I hope it's been helpful for you, and it's not the end of the conversation tonight. So I look forward to hearing from you, possibly, but I'm sure plenty of others will. Other notable people that I will mention is AJ Mills, who can't be with us tonight. He also does a lot of this stuff as well, and we'll be happy to help. He kind of, between me and him, we almost kind of cover, he covers the south, I cover the north, but I have been known to travel beyond the Midlands, so you know, it's not completely out of the question. And there are some folks here who will be receiving a visit from me, or have received a visit from me, and they are beyond the Midlands. But yeah, thank you, and apologies for the technical issues.
I'm sure you'd all like to join me in thanking Dan for this evening, and I want to extend the thank you to everyone else who's contributed. It's always just really helpful to learn from one another's experience and pool knowledge, and that way we hopefully grow in collective wisdom. Thank you too to Lorraine for bearing with everything on the technical front. A reminder to watch your emails, and sometimes these can go into spam because they're going to lots of people, but we will send a handout. We'll try and get Dan to write down most of the things that he shared this evening, so you get that in hard copy as well, and the links. Don't forget, we're running another session in 2 weeks' time, the 21st of October. 3 URC ministers who've been doing hybrid worship are going to very different styles of church, very different styles of services and worship. They're going to come and share what they've learnt from their experience. So hopefully that will be really helpful as well. And we already have on our YouTube channel a video of the session we did a couple of weeks ago with Sam Hargreaves from Engage Worship on how to make hybrid worship multi-sensory, which was a really excellent session. So thank you everyone for your time. Another reason to look out for the email is there will be attached to it an application form for a grant. So we have this funding. You can apply for up to £200 to help you put into practice anything that you've learned from this evening. So a really easy way to get £200 towards buying some of the equipment that Dan's been mentioning, if that's going to help you in your ministry. And I'll just close with a prayer. So, dear Lord, we have gathered online. We have joined and struggled to be community together via laptops, tablets, phones and computers. We've learned more so that we may faithfully serve you more and intentionally share your love. We thank you for the ways in which you've blessed our time together. May we continue to learn and grow and find new ways of being your people all together, both on site and online. Amen.